Okay, then. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelvin Claveria. I'm from the marketing team here at Rival Technologies and Reach 3 Insights. Welcome to Outliers. This is a live event series that we've created where we chat with amazing researchers to talk about some of the hottest topics in market research today. Today, I have Bill Trovinger from Albertsons. Before I pepper him with more questions, let me just talk about some housekeeping things just to make sure we know them. First and foremost, as we mentioned in our emails, Outliers really is a sort of like a casual Q&A format type of event. So there won't be PowerPoint deck or a formal presentation. And we encourage questions. So if you have any questions or feedback throughout the session, please feel free to share them on Zoom. And if for some reason you're not willing to share your question publicly, feel free to DM me as well, and I'll make sure that I capture that at the end. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is that at the end of this session, I'll share a short chat survey. It's literally like 1 minute for you to share your feedback about this event and also just about future topics that you want to hear about. So if you can do that to give me some feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. All right. With all of that said, I want to welcome Bill. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Kelvin. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Looks like we've got a good crowd today.
Yeah, and people are still coming in, so I'm excited. Yeah, so, we've never met until 15 minutes ago. So obviously, the first thing I did when you agreed to this was to stalk you on LinkedIn. And I've noticed that you've had an interesting career so far in insights. You've transitioned to different industries. You started in CPG, you moved to tech, and now you're in pharmacy and grocery. So to start, maybe tell us a little bit about that journey and what have you learned so far from moving from one industry to another?
Yeah, I think the first thing I've learned is I get bored quickly, just moving around so much. But really, kind of stepping all the way back, I always tell people I didn't know insights was a career path until I was in an MBA program, 5 years, post undergrad graduation. So I always tell younger researchers or newer researchers, if you know that insights exist, you're already well ahead of where I was back in the day. So I started my career at Procter & Gamble. Again, heavy CPG focus, and I actually worked on the Old Spice campaign with I'm on a horse, smell like a man, the whole brand reinvention.
Oh, that's cool.
Very, very cool introduction to insights because it was looking at sort of this brand that at the time was declining. Customers were old, it was boring. It was the deodorant your dad wore, to all of a sudden, almost overnight, saying, we need to go figure out a whole new strategy. We need to go research this younger consumer because we don't know anything about them because we haven't really targeted them in a long time. So from there, transition to General Mills, more CPG, again, great experience. CPG is a great training ground for a reason across many different career paths. But we wanted to make a change. And, just at the time, it was one of those major life decisions, and family moved to Seattle. I got a job at Microsoft doing B2B research. And really that's jump-started my tech, my place in tech. And then moved over to Amazon to do Amazon Fresh Grocery and their private brands, and then kind of brought it full circle with this sort of mix of CPG and tech, and now this health and pharmacy role with Albertsons Companies. And for anyone on the call not familiar, Albertsons, Safeway, Jewel-Osco if you're in Chicago, Star Shaw if you're in the Northeast. Trying to think of all of our other banners. We have 22 banners around the country. So while you may not have an Albertsons locally, you probably have one of our stores. And what my high level takeaway from all of that movement is you absolutely can move within industries. That's probably the most common question I get when people reach out to me on LinkedIn is, I'm thinking of making a transition to tech, or I'm thinking of going from tech to CPG. How do you tell that story? And the way I brought it to life was I liked working with products that impact people's everyday lives. Like, I'm curious about how people live and function day to day. And to me, I didn't see a difference between, deodorant and cereal, which you'd be eating or using every day, hopefully, to, I use Windows in Office every day. And, how does that fit into their life? And how do you meet the customer where they're at with that product? So I really kind of emphasize that when I told my story. And then I always tell people that, being curious about the customer and really focusing on their wants and needs is translatable to any industry. So having that customer focus and that customer curiosity will carry you far, beyond what the scope of the role is.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've been at Albertsons, I believe, for just over a year now.
Mhm.
Could you tell us a bit more about what you do there? How big is your team? What's your mandate, and what's your day-to-day like?
Yeah, I've had a wonderful first year at Albertsons, working in our health and pharmacy business. Just recently, we launched a new health platform called Sincerely Health, which it's timing of this is perfect because I think this is the first week I can actually publicly talk about what I've been working on for the last year. So it's been a great role. Great role in that it's new to the company. So there was no insights person in pharmacy. There really wasn't a marketing team for pharmacy until recently, within this past year. So a lot of it is kind of base business, understanding of our customers. So building those trackers, building those communications channels. There is a central team on the retail kind of grocery side that I can pull resources from. But I am a team of one. So still a lot of education, a lot of proving the worth of insights. But I will say that the team has been super welcoming, and you see presentations that start with customer quotes and start with a deep customer insight to say, we're going to go do this initiative because we know XYZ about the customer. And that was something I was really looking for as I transitioned into a new role. So I'm supporting everything from, COVID shots to pet prescriptions to, innovating with a new health and wellness platform. So wide gamut of things. And really just looking to help our pharmacy team innovate in ways that matter to the customer, because the whole landscape is changing so quickly. I think CVS just bought another company for $10 billion yesterday. So being on top of all of that, but also saying, we know our core customer is, getting prescriptions, they're getting their flu shots, they're getting their COVID shots. How do we make sure that we are serving them the best way possible while also, innovating in a way that's meaningful? So I think of my mom, who goes to the pharmacy like once a week and picks up medicines for my dad and her, and she likes talking to the pharmacist. She likes having that in-store experience. And we've still got a whole generation of customers who that's something they want. But we're starting to see that younger customer come into the space that, they're used to the Amazonification of the world and they want to order everything and have it delivered the next day.
Yeah.
So just a really interesting inflection point in the pharmacy universe of how do we service both customer groups without alienating either one.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned innovations. I think this is a good segue to talk about innovations and the future of research. Recently, you actually shared a prediction with Insights Association. I believe Crispin Beal from Behaviorally wrote the article. And your response to him when he asked you for your prediction caught my attention because to some extent it was almost like a hot take, So I'm gonna read your quote here. What you said. You said 2023 won't be about the shiniest new technology or most advanced analytics. So yeah, could you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I think if LinkedIn is any indication, 2023 is off to a challenging start. And I think research budgets are just going to be cut significantly. I think his question was about predictions for 2023. And that was my prediction at the time was research budgets are going to be tight. I think when I've talked internally with my team, I've used ruthlessly efficient. It's kind of how we need to think about our spend for research this year. So the idea of exploring new technologies, unproven methodologies that might get you the answers you need, it's going to be the first thing to get cut. It always is. I wish it wasn't, but doing this, 12 years, 13 years, always the first thing to go. So I think 2023 is going to ultimately be defined by the leaders who do more with less. But with that said, I don't want to discourage, internal teams, vendors from bringing new ideas to the table or trying to innovate in the space. Parts of the insight industry are going to look very, very different in 5-10 years. And it's going to be because of those people who continue to push that innovation. I think it's the question you need to kind of ask internally and ask yourself is this the right time for it? And does your team have the appetite for it right now? And I think it's hard to, in an environment with, layoffs, constraints, um, to say we're going to go do this. But that doesn't mean, what I will say, kind of tacking onto that though, is I think this might lead into your next question, but I try to hold about 10% of my budget for new ideas and innovation. Um, it just helps sort of, and that can come from different methodologies of, I'm going to go talk to completely new vendors that I think are doing really cool things. Or sometimes that's going back to sort of the big guys, your Kantar, Ipsos, whoever you use. And they say, hey, we've got this cool new thing you might want to, tack onto an existing project. So just knowing I've got a little pool of budget for that helps me. I don't want to say spend it without worrying, but knowing my manager's aligned to that idea and, it's open to test and learn and pilots, it's, if we can right size it, the opportunity is still there. What I think is going to disappear this year, maybe into next year, is hey, I met you at a conference. It's a super cool technology. We're going to jump in with both feet right away. That's something that, again, as budgets get cut, as resources become constrained, I just don't think is realistic. At least for the roles I've been in recently. Again, the team doesn't have the appetite for that sort of, here's this new AI, here's this new, text analytics. They're just so worried about meeting goals that it's something that's not landing with them.
Yeah, I want to double click a little bit on what you said about, asking yourself if this is the right time to bring in some new technology. Like, could you expand on that a little bit? How do you know if it's the right time for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I think when you build up the the insights capabilities within the organization, you're always looking to make that next step. Like it's, you start your career, you're managing some trackers, you do a couple projects, that's great. But it's on what's going to get you to either the next level in your career or what's going to get you to the next, level at a new company. Like, how are you taking the next step as a researcher? How are you continuing to grow and think about your, both research and your career and your customers and kind of bringing that all together. And I think for me, it usually comes down to, where is a place as a company we're looking to innovate that I can then potentially go do some more innovative research. Again, we've talked about the big CPG companies I've worked for, Microsoft. They've done a lot of research. Like, there's a lot of existing data and a lot of existing internal knowledge. So how are we thinking about, how does this new methodology, how does this innovation help us either connect with our customers differently or understand our customers differently? And I think that's where we need to really look, because if it's something with, hey, we just want to know how this signage is working in store, there's methodologies for that my manager already kind of knows what he wants. He's done that research. So you're not only having to overcome the hurdle of doing the research, you're having to overcome the hurdle of, my manager has an expectation of how he wants to see this data. And I'm going to bring in something out of left field. So I think it's finding those opportunities where there's a lot of newness is a great way to kind of open that conversation. Or say, we've done it this way in the past. We already have this data. Are you looking for something new and different? So, hey, we've done the signage work. We know it, yellow works better than blue. Black text works better than white text, whatever we've learned. What's new and different that we don't already have? I'm a big believer in using existing data, even if it's a little bit outdated. I think, again, I don't know if it's a research hot take, but I don't think customer behavior changes that quickly without a major forcing function. I will say, today in my role, COVID obviously changed the pharmacy landscape forever, very quickly. But when I think of some of the CPG products, some of the other products I've worked on, the customer behaviors are fairly similar, and you kind of just, with the right lens and thinking through, some external factors, you can get there without having to go do full new studies. But again, when you're talking innovation, it's how are we getting to something new? How are we uncovering something new? And yeah, but again, love doing it. I've done it throughout my career. I just think this year is going to be particularly challenging.
Yeah, I love your hot takes as well. So please keep them coming. And I know I know a few people as well who are passionate about making sure that market researchers use the data that they already have.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that's a very good point. I think you touched on this a little bit, but I want to ask just so in case you have additional thoughts. So yeah, leveraging proven approaches definitely important, especially when the stakes are high. And when
Yep.
there's a lot of uncertainty, definitely we're there right now.
Yep.
But researchers also need to innovate, so they evolve with consumers, make sure you're ahead. How do you find the right balance between those two? Between this need to innovate and the need for predictability, reliability, etc.
Yeah. And again, this might be a pessimistic take, but I always kind of wonder why do we want to innovate in this space? And is it because we truly want to connect with our customers and we want to move the insights industry forward, or like, am I trying to win in a war, or am I trying to get promoted? And I'll say again, neither one of those is wrong. But I think creating that balance and understanding the kind of hows and whys of innovation in the insight space. Again, I think where the tough balance comes in is I love talking to new vendors. I love talking about research, but then it's always the implementation part that becomes hard. So how do we translate those conversations where everyone's excited, everyone is on board with, we're going to go do this, we're going to work through, this new technology, we're going to do the eye tracking, the brainwave mapping, whatever we're going to do in that space. With then ultimately, like what still needs to get done with the business? Again, I'd love to turn off some big trackers. I'd love to, not have some of those questions pop up of we want to go start this new business line. But I can't, like that has to get done. But two things I've done that I think have really helped me push this innovation and get us to really quick and easy foundational learning that we can then explore more with these new methodologies is, this is just a great setup at Albertsons that I encourage, if a company can do something like this, I would encourage it. So we've got loyalty customers, you've got your Safeway card, your Albertsons card. We have groups of those folks who have opted in, which creates a kind of customer loyalty panel that I can go to with very basic surveys. Hey, we want to learn more about, I think something just came out recently about CVS and Walmart pharmacies are changing their hours. We just want to go learn about, like, what time do you shop at the pharmacy, and would it change where you shop if it closed at 4 p.m. or didn't open until 12 p.m. whatever. And just to get some like really quick, easy learning from our customers and say, hey, now we know XYZ. Oh, this is an opportunity. We need to go figure out a way to deep dive into this and translate this into something for the business. I feel like we're scarily far into this interview and I haven't said anything about turning insights into action. So I want to make sure that that's sort of an applied tacked on to everything I'm saying is everything we're learning, everything we're doing about the customer needs to be translated to then, a business action. And then I've got another panel of about 500 loyal pharmacy customers who I can do something similar with. And again, it's expensive. It's a kind of a big initial buy-in. But again, having a group of people who've been kind of on the pharmacy journey, we know they shop our pharmacies. We actually recruited them to have certain health conditions. So things like, okay, we know diabetes is super popular. Let's make sure we've got folks in the community who have either pre-diabetic, have diabetes, that are willing to share some of their experiences and how they're using our pharmacies and grocery, because it's a very food. There's a lot of food involvement with that illness. But being able to sort of say, hey, I went and did this super quick, low touch thing. And my thought is, if I can always get us 75% of the way to what we want to know, do we need to close that 25% gap? And if the answer is no, great. I move on to something else. Again, I'm a team of one, so like I've got to balance all of this.
Yeah.
If we don't have it, the thought is then that like it's not going to be a basic survey or a basic qual interviews that are going to get us the rest of that way there. And that's when my innovation brain starts to turn. So it's really using that starting point as a springboard to then say, I want to go innovate. I think where I've seen people sort of make the mistake is we want to go learn something for the first time, and then they jump into trying to do a really innovative methodology with it. And that's where it sort of falls apart, because now we don't know what we don't know. The methodology may or may not work, and we're sort of just left with this, like, this is great insights work. The methodology did exactly what we thought it was going to do, but like we don't have that base of understanding to know if this is good or bad, or what we can do with it going forward. So I think just setting up that platform where, like, worst case, if the innovation goes totally sideways, this methodology didn't work, we didn't get the right respondents, I can at least say we've done something.
Right.
I said, it's when you come back with you've invested time, money into this new project and come back empty-handed is that's when you lose a lot of credibility within an organization. But if I can go back and still say, hey, we still surveyed 1,000 people and we know this, it smooths over a lot of those problems.
Yeah, like being able to still show some sort of ROI or learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. We have a few more minutes before the Q&A here. I just want to ask you one question, because obviously we can't talk about innovation without talking about ChatGPT, because that seems to be
Absolutely.
what everyone is talking about. What are your thoughts on the immediate impact of ChatGPT and AI in general, specifically in 2023? Will there be any?
Yeah, no, I think it's super powerful. Like, again, just seeing what Bing is doing with it right now. I mean, I think people much smarter than me are very, very positive about the idea, and they're using it in ways that are super powerful. The next step is going to be, how do we harness it? I think people are recognizing it's a step above being just the next shiny object. Like, there is something to it. I don't know if people necessarily know exactly how to do it. So it's, how do we harness this? But what to be fair, I've used it for, like, creating an itinerary for a trip to Hawaii. And my son likes Paw Patrol stories before bed. So I'll type in, tell me a Paw Patrol story where, they go see a monster truck, and it'll spit me out a Paw Patrol bedtime story for him. So I think it's, how do I use it in the research world is where I'm still struggling. But I have seen people use it to effectively write surveys. And again, they're not perfect, but I also know if it can spit me out, again, a 75% baked survey, and I can then go and play with it, like, that's going to save so much time. I think where I get scared is when it turns into AI writing surveys and then AI answering surveys, that we then lose touch with some of the customers. Like, you lose some of that nuance if it's just sort of aggregating all of that learning. And we were talking right before, and I think what I'm really interested in is, so I teach market research at the University of Washington this spring, and the different perception from those who have been in the industry forever, just know how things work, to seeing how people who are just entering the industry and are a little bit more native to some of these ideas. And again, I'm fully expecting every class they're going to ask me why ChatGPT can't do this, and I'm going to have that conversation. So again, I think we are in a place where we know it's big, we know it's going to be big, and now it's all about just, how do we harness this in a way that doesn't, it's not harm the industry, because it's going to be good, but it's, how do we harness it in a way that doesn't just sort of give us generic insights? Like, again, I'm still one of the old school, like, I want to talk to people in person, I want to do shop alongs, I want to eat my product next to somebody who's eating it. And I worry this is just, it's going to aggregate until we get kind of the most generic insights. But again, it's also going to evolve and be scarily accurate. So I'm excited. Again, I think people at Microsoft are smarter than me, and they're betting big on it. So it's coming. It's going to be a game changer in the next, again, I think 2023 is going to be tough. I think you're going to start to see it. I think like 24, 25 is when you'll see a lot more of it.
Yeah. The Microsoft announcement yesterday in particular, I was like, I have to admit, I went to Bing for the first time in a while because of that announcement alone. So I think that's actually super disruptive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a great strategy, though, of Bing existed. People made fun of it. It printed money. Like, it was profitable because it was just whatever, a search engine that was already embedded. But I mean, they watched Google dominate for what, 20 years, 25 years?
Right.
And like when they had their chance, they absolutely just swung for the fences and yeah, like reinvigorated Bing with, one partnership and, one signing one check. So yeah, it's really impressive, but I'm excited to see what it does in the research world. As I said, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. I'll say that.
Yeah. One tip that I would suggest for everyone, recently Mike Stevens from Insight Platforms did a really good presentation about generative AI, and I thought it was super interesting. So I'll share that in the follow-up email. But he really went through almost like the end-to-end process of doing a research study and how you might use generative AI for each step. So I thought that was super cool. So I'll share that in a follow-up email. Okay, we are transitioning to audience Q&A, and Carol has a question.
And I have a few more minutes. Sorry to interrupt, Carol. I have a few more minutes. So if we go a couple minutes over, I'm totally happy to answer any questions people have.
Thanks. First, a quick comment on AI. I have not done it yet, but I've downloaded Jasper because I'm planning to put did about 30 consumer transcripts. I want to put it in there and just say, what top 10 insights do you have and see what happens. So it's a curious, incredibly interesting time.
Yes.
My question.
I've also seen it done for competitive, like I'm in the pharmacy space, like, hey, can you just give me a bunch of information about CVS? Or like,
fascinating.
I've seen it do that too, and just be shortcut for work. Yeah.
Gosh. Wow. All right. Well, so this is a more practical question. I'm a insights director at a small food company, and we really struggle going from a bunch of rough ideas that'll span from line extensions, really simple, things, to way out of the category. Like, we're going to enter a whole new category. And my team, we need to be able to quickly narrow those. I mean, certainly beyond the internal vetting, all that stuff that has to happen. Like, what tools and techniques do you like to bring in? And that first part of this, going from a bunch of ideas to we're going to work on these 3 ideas.
Yeah. I mean, and I know you're probably already doing all of the concept testing and.
Well, yeah, idea screens, like we do idea screens, but actually let's focus there, because once we get to concept testing, I'm okay. It's at the idea screen piece. Are we really doing the right work to vet what we should be doing next? And
yeah, no, and it's hard to know. And there's always the business considerations as well, which is always something the consumer doesn't know. I think there are some General Mills people online, but like, if we have to build a new production line to enter this new category, like it needs to be, 100x the size of a line extension to be viable. But I think with the idea screening, what I like to do is, again, I use our loyalty panel pretty extensively. And what I like to do with them, and it's hard because they are not representative of any general population. But so my kind of stock answer is always, is this representative? No. Are these our customers? Yes. So what I'm looking for when I send those ideas out with them, and again, I'm doing very basic surveys, is just try to give them an overview of what we're trying to do. And then a lot of just like rank order just like, give me a rank order, because I always want to just know where it falls. But what my manager and I like to do is we always brainstorm like statements around things. So this is a product I would expect to find at Whole Foods.
Interesting.
And just like, and again, it's not as scalable or as repeatable, because to be fair, him and I will just sit and brainstorm those for way too long. But we just, like, what are we trying to accomplish with this? Like, hey, I want to, I could imagine seeing an ad for this on Instagram. So just kind of like where you want to play and what you want this product to be, or how you want it to be sort of taken in by the customer, and think about it from the customer view. And then we just sort of rate those. We've got a couple for pharmacy that we always use. So, is a trusted partner in my healthcare journey, is a brand I trust, and like and fits with our Albertsons overall brand. But then depending on the initiative, we just kind of brainstorm these. And again, I don't want to call them funny, but like we kind of just come up with these, like, what do we want this to be and where do we want this to live in consumers' minds?
Uh,
And use those kinds of statements. Again, the Whole Foods one is a good
push
example.
it out a little bit further than just because the idea screening is to, it's a pretty standardized thing. So yeah, very interesting.
I just find that's where the rich conversation comes from. Because again, as our leadership team gets used to seeing those standard questions. So like, they look at those bar charts for a second and they're like, okay, got it. Like, this is the one people trust. This is the one that fits with our brand. And then we get into this conversation of like, oh, but people, they don't understand, like, they don't see how this ties to health, or we were doing something.
Relevance.
Yeah, they're just like deeper dives into relevance, basically. We did one on, we called it lifestyle, but things like you would get from Hims and Hers or Roman, hair loss, skincare type, prescriptions. And just because I was using them as a benchmark, we looked at anxiety medications or anti-anxiety, and they like very, very strong pushback of like, that is not lifestyle. Anxiety and hair loss are two very different things. Like, it just gave us this like, okay, so this is somewhere we can still play because we're still a pharmacy, but like, we're getting some of that spectrum of like medical versus sort of cosmetic, and how we talk about it has to be different. And that wouldn't have come out if we just asked about trust and healthcare and your health and well-being. It wasn't until we got into those sort of, more declarative statements.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, great discussion there. Christine has a question. Christine, would you be comfortable going online?
Sure. I have a barking dog in the background. I apologize. So one of my questions for you is, so my background or kind of my foundation market research has always been qualitative research. So like you were mentioning before, I love actually being able to look at people, talk to them, understand what they're saying, as well as reading between the lines as to what they're not saying. I also am a one man, one woman army in my position now. So we have switched to a very quant focused approach just to get more bang for the buck as much as possible. And I still find myself very skeptical of responses in quantitative studies and quality of data, and wanting to hang my hat on that, building an insights function within my organization. And so I'm just wondering if you have any best in class approaches to vetting sample providers, what you look for, just to make sure, because there's a lot more do-it-yourself research platforms out there, which is great, but also just making sure that the quality of responses are reliable. I don't know if you have any input on that.
So that was our central team actually handled getting our loyalty panel set up. So the only thing that I make sure I do is I have a battery of 4 or 5 questions that I use at the very, like, it's kind of a screener within the survey. So they've already gotten through the screener because they're in our platform, they're in whoever our provider is. But then I screen again at the very beginning, just to try and get as accurate as possible. And even with that, I have to be extra careful about that the audience and the topic match. So I said, we just launched a new health platform, and my loyalty panel skews very old, especially when I start to dig into pharmacy specifically, because people using our pharmacies tend to be older. And I was having a really hard time getting them to really, it was basically, I don't want to interact with an app to do anything with my pharmacy, and having to really work through that. So I haven't gone through the evaluation process recently of a vendor, only because my last 2 roles were, so Amazon, we had our kind of Amazon black box system that sent it to a bunch of Amazon customers based on criteria. And then in this current role, I am using our internal panel. So there's not even an external component to it. You have to we have your information because you have a loyalty card at our store. So I apologize.
No, that's fine. I think panel is the best bet. Probably like internal panel, I agree, is probably the best way to go. I was just curious. Yeah, if there's.
And one thing I would look at though that we're doing for next year, I don't have all the details of it yet, but I know we're taking our internal panel and then supplementing it with a panel provider. Only because again, I'm sending surveys and it's 80% or over 55, which is great, except I do need to be able to say, if I can send that same survey and get at least some other perspectives on it, just to make sure that it's not crazy out of line with, hey, our customers skew one way, and that's great, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So I'm trying to figure out a way now where I can do that, where I can say, here's our loyal customers, here's what they think, and then, kind of a random sample of folks, here's what they think, and here's where we're seeing some similarities and differences.
Yeah.
So that's the best I can answer.
No, awesome. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, Kristen, I just want to offer a couple of thoughts, perhaps. One is, so on our platform, we allow companies to get video feedback. That might be interesting just because if the sample provider, if most of their panelists are really just professional survey takers, usually what we find is that they're less likely to submit quality videos. So that might be an interesting sort of test. The other thing I was just gonna suggest is our customer success team has done a lot of research on this, but like mixing sources is usually best. So in addition to sample providers, you might wanna, obviously you wanna use your internal sources, but also social ads or even like through your website, through your apps. Like the more you can sort of add diversity to your sample, that usually that works. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, we do.
Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
We do a lot of videos with our smaller sample, like our more, again, they were helping us with a lot of the innovation for the health platform. And I also think that's just a great, it's such a great reminder of like, you have a picture of what you think your customer looks like, and then you see them talking about it. And again, you can read a little bit more between the lines, but I also think just, reminding leadership that, your customers are just they're all unique people. Again, working in health now, health is deeply personal. I always feel like that it's not a research takeaway, but I always feel like that's super impactful, that like how you envision, again, it might be you yourself as a customer, but like, they're younger, they're older, they're, there's more men, there's more, like whatever, however they kind of appear on screen, like that's your customer. That's impossible to ignore when they're speaking to you directly through a video.
It takes people out of the stock photos. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually, we worked with the Oprah Winfrey Network, and at one point, like we showed them videos from like watch alongs. And it's interesting because after they saw it, it went all the way to Oprah, and basically she said, hey, from this on, like if you share insights with me, I want to see the videos as well. So definitely. Okay, I think we're at time. So thanks so much, Bill, for going overtime with us. And
Absolutely.
Thanks everyone for coming. As I mentioned, I will follow up with a few items. Bill, just curious, if people want to reach out to you or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the fastest way. Pretty active over there. So you'll find me on LinkedIn. My picture is me with my son sitting on my shoulders. So pretty easy to find. And if you connect with me there, I am absolutely happy to reconnect. And if you just put in the note that you were at this session, that'll just help me. It'll cut through the clutter of some of the other LinkedIn messages we all get.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again, everyone, and have a good week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.